First of all, welcome everybody. You are in the lecture SOC20230. That's analytical sociology. If you want to go to popular music, I was just told there was a mishap in the announcement of the rooms. You're supposed to go to lecture theater O, right? So this is a sociology class. If you want to go to the musicology class, it's lecture theater O. Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Thomas Grund. I'm associate professor at the School of Sociology. I wasn't around for the last year. I was actually on a sabbatical in Switzerland, and now I'm back in Dublin. It's very exciting for me to be back, but that's why you might not have seen me before. Otherwise, I would have taught the introduction to or the sociological analysis and research design class that a lot of you would have taken. Okay. So that's me. About you, there are actually now two sets of students here in the room. First of all, we have bachelor students either enrolled in the BA program or in the Bachelor of Social Science program. Maybe you can put your hands up so that I get a brief idea if you're in that program. Okay. And secondly, we should have master students from the Social Data and Analytics program in here. Yeah. Can you lift your hand? Okay. So this module is designed for all of you. So there's going to be no difference. I'm not going to treat you any different in a way in terms of like what the assignment is, how the whole procedure goes, and so on. So you will all have to do the same things. You will all have to come to the lectures, attend the lectures, and do the readings, and do the assignments as everybody else. However, once in a while, I'm going to flash certain items for the master students, especially because I think this module is great for you to get an idea about potential master theses, about a potential master thesis project. And these are then ideas that I flash where I would actually be happy or willing or excited to supervise a project. And for the master students, I can only recommend you, even though this is your first week, I can recommend you, or you get the most out of your program when you start thinking about your master's project early on. Right? Because sometimes people start too late with that, and then it's really hard to put it into a certain direction or to help you with it. Okay, so this is analytical sociology. Before we start today I'm only scratching the surface on the substantive side, but mostly I'm going to talk about the practicalities of this module, yeah, how it all works. So how does it work? Well, generally in my lectures there are sort of three rules. The first one is show up, right? So why do we have that rule? Well, because life rewards showing up. Actually, when you show up, that's half the battle. You show up, you actually get this lecture, you can listen to it, you have the time, you focus on it, you can ask questions, you can talk to other people around it, you see where you're at. So that's the first rule, show up. Generally, it's a good rule at the university to show up. But here in particular, I would say. There will also be lots of activities that you would miss out if you don't show up, right? So keep that in mind. Okay, the second rule is pay attention. Pay attention for your own sake, but also for the sake of the people around you, right? Luckily, this is a smaller lecture theater, so it's easier to control the crowd. Interestingly, we're going to talk about the crowd at some point. We're going to talk about the wisdom of the crowd, and you will see how incredibly intelligent you all are, if you would not have thought so already. But pay attention to what I say, and please be quiet and don't disturb the people around you. I know sometimes you don't see each other for a while, but use the breaks in between, use the time before and after the lecture to catch up. Okay, thirdly, this lecture is actually, there's going to be a lot of reading for it. So for the master students, it shouldn't be something new, but for the bachelor students, this is now the progression. We're moving on a little bit. You guys, you had to read stuff during the first year already, right? But now this is going to be more. That's just how sociology is. You have to read stuff. And actually, what you will do in this lecture, you will actually read the real stuff. So I'm a big fan of exposing you as quickly as possible to the real things, because I don't think stuff needs to be dumbed down. I see no reason why. So that's why you're reading the stuff that I would read, that my colleagues would read. And a lot of that, sometimes you might not understand everything, but the key is to stay on the top of it, to try to understand as much as possible, and don't freak out if you don't understand something. That's the same thing that happens to me. I read an article, I don't understand everything from the beginning on. It's something you have to get into, and the key thing is not to freak out about it. Okay, so these are my 3 rules. Showing up, pay attention, and do the readings. And don't fall behind on the readings. However, I have a few components implemented in this module that should prevent you from falling behind in the readings. There's going to be quizzes in between. There's going to be take-home tests in between, all along through the term, so that if you go along with it, you won't fall behind on the readings. Right? So it's designed that you don't fall behind on the readings, but you need to do what I ask you to do. Okay, what you will also notice in this module, which might be different from the modules that you have had before, is that actually I'm recording everything. So I'm recording the screen, I'm recording what I say, I'm recording all the mistakes that I make, all the inappropriate things that I might say, and I do say a few inappropriate things once in a while. So everything will be recorded. Why am I doing that? Well, I'm doing that so that you have a resource to go back to afterwards. Right? So actually, before the exam, it's actually really helpful to then go back to the lectures and listen to stuff again. And you will see that, that's interesting. I'm saying that I'm recording stuff when people leave. Yeah? Rule number 1, show up, guys. Yeah. So they're going to miss out on all the cool interactive components. You know, it's their mistake. It's their fault. So stuff will be made available for you. It's just another resource that I think is going to be very helpful for you. And besides, it also forces me to not talk about any bullcrap here, because nobody wants to look stupid on YouTube, right? Anyway, but you will see how this is going to be made available. So actually, it's all in Blackboard. Hopefully, it's all very intuitive about how you will experience this module. Okay, as I said, they're going to be interactive components. So actually, I encourage you to bring your phones. I encourage you to bring your computer and things like that. We will make use of it, right? So there will be quizzes in between. There will be some interaction. And there I will say, guys, take out your phone. Now we do this. Yeah. As I had mentioned, there will be quizzes. So there might be a quiz in between. There will definitely be a longer quiz at the end of the day where we revise course content in the format of a game show a little bit. It's actually a lot of fun. Yeah. But it also means there are going to be quizzes at the beginning of the lecture, guys. So, and these quizzes or these questions will be about the readings that you had to do for that day, right? So do the readings in advance, or I don't know, actually, you know, you might not be able to have the right answer on the quiz. The quiz is there's no grades on these kind of things, right? But that's like a self-assessment for yourself that you see where you are. But it's also an assessment where I can see, okay, what did people understand, or what did you, what might you have not understood in a way, and then I can come back to it. You will also see, which might be different from other modules that you had before, that there will be 2 take-home tests, 2 take-home exams. They will be, I don't know, I have the dates later on, at a certain stage of the, I think it's after week 7, and then the other one after week 11. These are take-home tests. And once we get to the take-home test, I will talk more about it. Actually, I will talk a little bit today about it as well. But essentially, this is a 72-hour online test, where the test will be made available after the Thursday lecture, and then you go off. You have 72 hours to do with it what you want. But if you haven't completed it, 72 hours later, you get 0 points for it. So you have 72 hours to answer questions about the readings, you know, and actually the whole point of that is that you actually at home can look at the readings, that you can look at the lecture material, that you can look at the videos or the slides that are made available, right? So the whole point of that is, well, first of all, it's going to be assessed. It's going to be each of these take-home tests will make up 10% of your overall grade. So it adds up, yeah? But also on the top of that, this is the opportunity for you to catch up on things if you haven't done the readings up to that point. So these are the take-home tests, but I will talk more about this in a second. So as I had mentioned, this module is using Blackboard, and this is now an example of this interactive component that I'm talking about. So please take out your phones, your computer, wherever you are, electric toothbrush, whatever you have to connect to the internet these days. Take that, go to this website, www.menti.com. There you're going to be asked for a code. You type in that code, and then you answer the question. Okay, most people seem to know Blackboard, which is great. For those who don't worry about it. You know, Blackboard is the online virtual learning environment that UCD has until actually the middle of next year. Then we're going to change to a whole other one, and you're going to see another one as well. But you know, let's not worry about that right now. Blackboard is the online virtual learning environment that UCD has at the moment, and you assess Blackboard when you go to elearning.ucd.ie, or alternatively, when you log into your UCD emails, there should be buttons somewhere about Blackboard, right? Wherever you kind of log into UCD, UCD Connect. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but you can also directly find it under elearning.ucd.ie. And this is where all your modules have like a rubric or a little folder, and in that folder you will have one for analytical sociology for this module, and there will be a lot of information and readings and assessments and assignments and so on for this module. So it's crucial for you to figure that out. It was only a few of those. Maybe you can ask students around you to help you with that if you keep having problems with that. If not, there's IT help desk to give support with Blackboard. Okay, when you log into Blackboard, this is what you're going to see right now. Actually, I just updated stuff. I'm one of those guys who just updated stuff just half an hour ago. So if you kind of checked it out a little earlier, this was like an older version of this module. Now it's the up-to-date version of it. When you log into it, you'll see these menu buttons on the left. You'll see module information. And when you log in there, you find information about the particulars of this module. Actually, you find a document called syllabus. And in that syllabus document, there's also summarized the stuff that I say here right now about how this module works. But there you also see already the week-by-week plan of what we're going to cover, what the readings are going to be, when the assignments are, and so on and so forth. Right? So actually, it's very, very useful, a good idea for you to print out the syllabus so that you have an idea about what is to come and what you are expected to do. Okay, this module has different components. You know, as I said already, the readings, they are actually very important in this module. You won't be able to fly through this module if you don't do the readings. Right? That's just the rule. You have to do the readings. And the readings will be in advance of a lecture. They will be in advance of a lecture. That doesn't mean that you can then bang on me summarizing whatever was in that reading. Right? So I will talk about different things. But the reading is required for you to do. The reading is relevant for the exam. The reading is relevant for all the assessments that you will have. What you will see is that the readings are highly selected. Right? So it's not that I'm going to bombard you with readings. Actually, there's one reading every week, or one reading every lecture. Excuse me. So actually, it ends up with 2 readings every week. And that one reading could be, sometimes it's 5 pages, sometimes it's maybe 20 pages. It really depends. Yeah? But it's rarely more than that. And actually, all of those readings, I selected them in such a way that I think they are good readings. That means they are understandable for you, and I think it's also really good research. And what you will see is there are actually an awful amount of papers published in Science, in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, or in the American Journal of Sociology. These are sort of like our best journals. Right? This is sort of where folks like me try to publish our work. And as I said, I see no reason why in this module we shouldn't start reading the good stuff. So the readings will be before the lecture. I will announce the reading for the next lecture at the end of each lecture. And if there it's possible, I don't know, I hope not, but if there is a deviation from the syllabus, I will announce that in the lecture as well. So if there will be another reading for you to read, I will announce that at the end of each lecture before the next one is to come. Okay, the readings, the second component that we have are the lectures. Right, that's basically what we're doing right now. It's basically me standing here and talking to you about various things. Then there will be an assignment. The assignment is actually just before, I think it's going to be announced in week 7, just before the reading week. You will have 2 weeks to complete the assignment. It's like a little homework, right? Actually, where you might have to write something. Actually, most likely you will have to do something as well. Most likely you might have to do a little experiment, something in your everyday life, where we kind of look at social dynamics, where we look at something that kind of matters for this modular stuff that we cover. But that will be announced in week 7, and then you'll have these 2 take-home tests, online tests. They will be, I think, the first one at the end of week 5, and the other one at the end of week 11. But I have the details later on, so don't quote me on that right now. Okay, let's briefly talk about the readings. So we have the readings. So now this is actually how Blackboard also looks like. Now we are not in module information anymore, but now we are in syllabus on the main menu. This is your go-to point. And as you will see, as we develop the lecture, this is then where also the slides are going to be posted. This is where the video is going to be. This is basically 1-page syllabus where you see everything about this module that is of relevance. And here you see, okay, next on Thursday, 13th of September, the topic will be what is analytical sociology. And you see now there's a required reading and there are further readings. There's 1 required reading and 2 further readings. So the 1 required reading is the reading by Alan Sokal, Transgressing the Boundaries Towards the Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. So, and what you also see is that up there are these texts attached as PDFs. So it's actually really easy for you guys. Now, you don't even have to get to the library. The bloody thing is all up there, right? So you go onto that, you read that, you prepare that article, or you read it before our next lecture. I also attach all the further readings. I don't expect you to do all the further readings. The further readings are not necessarily relevant for the exam. However, what I do say during the lecture is relevant for the exam. But I add those further readings, hopefully for stuff that you find interesting, to look at it or to read up on something. And if you're, especially for the master students, if you want to get more about a topic, if you're thinking about potentially writing a master thesis on a topic, this is your starting point. So we have required readings and we have further readings, but everybody is welcome, encouraged to read the further readings as well. But then we're talking a bit about some more readings. Okay. Another thing about the lectures, you're already here, you found it. So we are here in the R, Tuesdays at 3 o'clock and Thursdays at 4 o'clock. One announcement, on the 25th of September, it's a Tuesday, there won't be a lecture. Actually, I'm going to be away. And on the 29th to the 3rd of November, we have the reading break across the whole School of Sociology. So there won't be any physical lectures, but you will get other things to do. Actually, on my side, from my side, you will have the assignment to do. Okay, you will also see we will have little breaks in between where we have small within lecture tasks, right? So these within lecture tasks, they are not graded. They're not graded, but there I will ask you in small little teams, maybe 2 or 3 people get together and discuss something or think about something, and then we will talk about it in the lecture here as well. So you will see that once in a while that we have a little break like that. And I'm known to walk around and to pinpoint people at the very end as well to talk about, I don't know, what they came up with during this little exercise. Okay, we have the assignment. The assignment, actually now here I have the date. The assignment will be posted in Blackboard on the 23rd of October. And it is due 2 weeks later. The whole submission process goes through Blackboard. Once we get to that, I will show it to you again. But on Blackboard, there's another menu called Assessments. And under that, you will then find the assignments and also instructions on how to upload your solution for it. Okay, group work is not allowed in case there are any medical issues, get in touch with our undergraduate administrator, but I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, this is where you see now the assessment manual. It's not updated yet, but later on you will find the assessment on the assignments there. Okay, the take-home tests. Let me say a few things about that. As I said, 2 take-home tests. First one will be posted on the 14th of October, and the second one on the 25th of November. Always a Thursday. It's always a Thursday, just at the beginning of the lecture. And then it will be online for 72 hours. And then there will be all sorts of questions. Sometimes it's multiple choice, sometimes it's filling in certain words. Could be various different things. It's all going to be through Blackboard. And the point of this is so that you actually get a chance to really dig into those readings again, in case you haven't done so before. Right? But keep in mind, this adds up to each of these tests counts for 10% of your overall grade for this module. So it is worth putting the effort into this here. And it will also be posted on the assessment page, but once we get to that, I'm going to remind you, I'm going to show you again how it works. Okay, let's talk about the exam and the grading of the thing. There's going to be an end-of-term exam for this module as well. So we have 3 components that make up your grade for this module. The first one actually is this exam. It's a 1-hour exam. It's going to be between the 10th and the 21st of December. We don't have the date yet. We only get them later on during the term. As soon as we have the date, I will let you know. And for the exam, you need in-depth knowledge of the required readings. Right? So you will have to do the readings, but if you do what I tell you, if you show up, if you do the readings, right? If you interact, if you kind of engage in the group activities, I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to ace this class. Right? That's sort of my thinking. I think everybody has the potential, and I know that you guys have that. That's because I designed the module in such a way that everybody can get an A in this module. Right? It is work though, yeah? But that is life, right? So, but if you follow what I do, what I tell you to do, everybody has a chance, and everybody should get an A in this module. And I love to give A's in this module, right? When I see that you guys do the work. So 60% of the overall grade will come from this exam. 20% will come from the 2 take-home tests, 10% each, right? And in those take-home tests, 72 hours. Normally, the test shouldn't take longer than an hour or 2, so you will find the time. You have the time to interrupt in between. You have the time to actually stop after one question, go back to the reading, do the reading, think about it, and then answer that question and so on, right? So it gives you a breather to do that, but it will only be there for 72 hours. And there will be the opportunity for interrupting, stopping, and continuing later on. There won't be an opportunity to go back to an earlier question that you already answered. Okay, the last component, the last 20%, and that makes 100%, comes from the assignment that will be posted on the 23rd of October. In that assignment, the idea is, well, the first one is actually to make sure that you do get the knowledge, right, in these take-home tests. Then the assignment is like a transfer of knowledge exercise. Like, how do we apply that? How do we take that to another level? How do we actually then write something about it? And in that regard, another smaller component of this is to make sure that you are able to write an essay, that you are able to hand something in, and that's the format that the exam is going to be at the end as well. Okay. As I said, the module is going to be the same for both the bachelor's and the master's students, but once in a while you see a little light going up or you see a little flashlight in that regard. That's just where I think this is actually a pretty exciting idea for a master's project where we know the literature, but maybe something is missing, and that this is an opportunity for you to take it further. Actually, it happens to me all the time that I do a reading and I have so many new ideas about what one could do next, but I hardly have the time to follow up on it. So whenever I kind of will come across that, I will highlight that to you guys, because that kind of marks a nice entry point for you to think about a potential thesis. So I think this module is great for coming up with ideas for a potential master's project. And if you are a bachelor student, it also gives you an idea about where this could take you later on. Right? Okay. So in case there are any questions about these modules, the first point to look at, or the first thing you should do, is check the module information in Blackboard. Actually, a lot of the things are outlined there. So hopefully they are outlined there in such a clear way that you don't have too many questions. There are other ways to think about questions. There's actually a discussion board on Blackboard, so I welcome you to encourage you to use that. That's like the resource where you can draw on each other. One of you has a question, maybe somebody else knows the answer about it, or you just want to rant about something. I don't know. I'm not going to interfere too much into that. So as I said, one of the biggest resources that you guys have are the people around you. So long after this module will be over, long after your university life will be over, you might not necessarily remember all the lectures that you had, but you will remember the people sitting next to you. So these are sort of your peers. These are the people that you can draw the most from. I still draw from the network of people that I met during my own studies. Now we are professors all over the world. It's actually pretty exciting because we get to see each other and we get to invite each other and so on. So the peers are your biggest resource. And always think about it in this way. When you have a question, actually there's a good chance that somebody else has that question too. So I believe there are no stupid questions. And you should never feel that a question that you have might be stupid. Right? If you have the question, that's the question. So never be afraid of asking questions. Actually, this is something that distinguishes good from bad students, or from students that make it and students that fail. That kind of bad students might not necessarily be worse students, but they are often afraid of asking for help or asking the questions that they might have. Okay, so we have the peers, we have the discussion forum, which is like one way of interacting with each other if you don't know each other yet. We have the administrators for this module. This does have an undergraduate code, so for the bachelor students, it's our undergraduate administrator, Deirdre Brophy. You might have come across her before. She's really nice. She's very helpful. If you have any information about any question about this module on an administrative side that has nothing to do with the substantive side. In case you are a master's student, well, you can ask Deirdre as well, but you could also go to Lucia Suchorova. Actually, it's more outlined. I don't have her in the slide here. Actually, why don't I have her in the slide? Actually, here I have her in the slide. There we go. Yeah. So Lucia, she's our postgraduate administrator. You might have come across her. So she's the point of contact for you guys when you have any administrative issues. But they both sit in the same office. They're both up on the 4th floor in the D staircase in sociology. Right? Okay. So, but there's also me. You can also get in touch with me. Feel free to do so, or to ask me a question after the lecture. My office hours are by appointment. Okay, do we have any questions about what I said so far?
What's the word count for the assignment?
I don't know that yet. Yeah, I think the last time it was around 1,500, but that really depends on what the assignment at the end is going to be. So right now I'm thinking about having you do a different assignment where I also ask you to go out and do a little experiment. And if that is the case, if that's going to be the case, then the word count will be less compared to if it's all just reading or writing based. Any other questions? Everything good? Yeah? Great. Exciting. So what I did bring with me now, just a little bit, we're just going to scratch the surface a little bit. We might stop earlier. I'm just going to try to give you a bit of a flavor what this lecture is about, what is analytical sociology. Well, actually on Thursday we're going to have a whole lecture about that, and by that time it's going to be clearer to you as well. Okay, so actually analytical sociology, when you think about it, it's actually like a recent trend in sociology. There's now a section in the American Sociological Association. Now there's international organization and international network for analytical sociology and so on. Actually, the whole thing started, I would say, 2007, 2008, around a guy called Peter Hedstrom, who was a professor at Oxford, and other people around him. And by now it became a bigger movement in sociology. There are bigger conferences about this. People write papers about it and so on. As it turns out, I happened to be in the middle of it. Actually, I was a PhD student of Peter Hedstrom in Oxford at the time. And so I was at this movement from the very beginning on. So analytical sociology actually starts with thinking about how do we answer questions, how do we explain something, how does something come about, right? And then very quickly we're thinking about social dynamics that matter here. We're talking about social influence, yeah? How what you do influences somebody else, which then influences somebody else, and so on, for example. But in the essence, and if you would ask Peter, he started this from this philosophy of social science point of view about how can we make an explanation, right? And his answer was, well, we need to think about how something comes about. Sounds ridiculous, sounds ridiculously simple, but actually it isn't, right? Before, people didn't do that. They didn't think about what we call the generative process. The generative process is how something is being produced. And once you kind of take that seriously, once you kind of take that thinking about we explain something by showing how it comes about, right? That's also referred to as the mechanism. Talk more about that. Once you kind of take that seriously, very quickly you have to start talking about social dynamics, you have to talk about complex systems, you have to talk about social networks. These are kind of the things that kind of then really matter because they play a crucial role for how something comes about. Because then whatever I do affects other people around me, and there we are, there my social networks matter, the people that see me, and that kind of changes the situation for them. Then they might experience it in a different way, which then kind of triggers them to interpret the situation in a different way and then behave in a certain way and so on and so forth. So then we have like these dynamic processes that unfold. And actually, I think these dynamic processes are really exciting because they capture the real life. This is how the real world goes. And actually, for the longest time, sociologists didn't look at these dynamics. And I find that fascinating and ridiculous at the same time. Because sociology is about individuals being embedded in social contexts. It is about the whole being more than the sum of its parts, right? If it is just that sociology is about looking at the larger scale, what every individual does, then we don't need sociologists, in my opinion. I think others can do that much better. Other disciplines are much better in explaining why individuals behave in a certain way. Other disciplines are better in describing actually what's happening at the macro level. But I think the true value added of sociology comes from bridging these things. Comes from bridging of thinking about how does what I do, what do you do, what do individuals do, affect the social context, the environment for others, which then kind of has an impact on how other people yet again behave and interpret the situation and so on. Right? We have a lecture about that. You'll see the Coleman boat, James Coleman, micro-macro links. Maybe you came across that before. That's crucial for this thing here. Right? So it's kind of about bridging different levels, but we'll see more about what I mean about that as we go on in the lecture. Well, actually, the funny thing is I started my career, I did very traditional research, at this very traditional place where you would study social stratification, you would study social mobility and these kind of things. And people did that for the last 60 years. And they're really good in that. And I looked at social stratification and social class differences, which are very important. Not to say that it's not important. I looked at this. I started my PhD project on that. I looked at social class differences and eating and drinking behavior. So I looked at what do people from different social classes eat? What do they drink? And so on, right? But very quickly, I realized I'm doing the sociology of mashed potatoes, which was a little unsatisfying because I realized I'm trying to explain a micro-level behavior with something huge as social class. So I realized I'm talking about different levels here, and this is not the most, in my opinion, the most useful way to go forward because, as I said, other disciplines are better in explaining individual choices. For example, psychologists. Social psychologists and so on. But they don't link these levels with each other. And I think this is sort of where, for me at least, I found sociology really exciting and really interesting when I came across, at the time, a supervisor, but then, kind of started to learn more about complex systems, social network analysis, computational social science, but also analytical sociology. Okay, so it starts from how do we think about something. As I had mentioned before, it's about different levels of looking at things. We will talk about the micro level, we will talk about the macro level, and we will see how we combine these things, how the macro level forms the environment for the micro to emerge, and how the aggregation or the interaction of the micro then creates the macro level in consequence, and how the whole process repeats itself. Right? So it's actually a very dynamic thing. One classic example that Thomas Schelling used in his book, great book, Micromotives and Macro Behavior. It's a Nobel Prize winner. A couple of funny stories about him, but I'll tell you the stories once we kind of talk about him, actually. And sadly, he's dead right now. But he looked at, for example, dynamics when people walk into a room. Where do they sit, right? And actually, it really matters where people sit at first, where then the next people come, and so on, so forth. So you do have social dynamics that unfold. And more often than not, you realize that you are part of these social dynamics in your everyday life. So hopefully by the end of this lecture, you also get a sense for these kind of scenarios in your everyday life. Okay, as I said, it's often about interdependencies. It's about one thing leading to something else, leading to something else, leading to something else. And then at the end, it might happen that something comes about that nobody wanted. And that's sort of fascinating. That's sort of something where we have then social dilemma situations, where everybody individually wants one thing, but collectively we end up in something completely else, which might be worse, right? Which might be actually not the optimum, like where basically everybody is worse if we would have done something else. So it's like this balance between the different levels that can come about through these interdependencies, through these domino effects that unravel and unfold. And the big example is, and we'll have 2 lectures at least about that, is segregation. Segregation, where you see that historically it came from the States, where African Americans used to live in one part of the city, Chinese used to live in another part of the city, and Native Americans or the whites used to live in another part of the city, and so on. And then you have this highly segregated, right? And it's a big puzzle, like how does it come about in the first instance? And as you will see, dynamics matter greatly here, because you will see that we can end up in situations that are highly segregated, even though everybody wants to live in an integrated world. There you see this balance between the individual level and the collective level, where the micro and the macro actually lead to different things, or where the interests of the individuals don't necessarily lead to the same thing at the macro level. It used to be this thinking was an utilitarian view. Social philosophers back in the days, they thought that if every individual does what is best for that individual, we will necessarily create what is best for the society. Nowadays, we know that this is not the case. Actually, oftentimes, when individuals do what is best for them, they create a tragedy of the commons, a situation where everybody is worse off. So sometimes, and this is where actually we as sociologists can have a big impact in kind of helping society to reach that higher level and working more efficiently. So as I said, there's also going to be social networks, and here are a couple of topics that we will cover. So first we will talk about what analytical sociology is. You will see there's an emphasis on clarity and precision. I try to also apply that in my lectures to be clear and precise. And if I'm not, please let me know. It is about social dynamics. It is about this micro-macro link that I briefly talked about. And then we will, I think in the 4th week, we will talk about the wisdom of the crowd. It's actually where individual level and collective level are different in the ways how things are being assessed. And as it turns out, one of the things here is that collectively crowds are incredibly intelligent, sometimes more intelligent than every single individual in them. We'll talk about social influence, how it works, and you will see how it actually affects our daily life. Self-fulfilling prophecies. Maybe you heard about the bank run, where basically the bank is solvent, but then there's a rumor that the bank is not solvent anymore. And then everybody runs to the bank and withdraws money, and because other people withdraw their money, you actually get reinforced in your thinking that the bank doesn't have any money anymore. And you go and actually then withdraw your money as well, because others did it. And at the end, because of that, when everybody withdraws their money, the bank goes bust. They don't have enough money to give everybody's money back. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy, where like a belief into something triggers a certain action, which then actually makes the belief come true. Self-fulfilling prophecy, we also have self-defeating prophecies, which is the opposite of that. Then you'll see there are very interesting success breeds success dynamics. We also call that the Matthew effect, where some people, because they are successful, they become even more successful. So it has nothing to do with how good they were originally. It's really just a dynamic process that kind of makes some people better and better and better. In the sociological literature, it's also called cumulative advantage, and it leads to social inequality. It's a major mechanism that leads to social inequality. And there you see how these dynamics actually really matter for the macro level outcomes that we have at the end of the day. We'll talk about broken windows. With broken windows, actually, it's something that comes from criminology, but the sociology of crime is also very interested in that. It's actually about the spread of disorder. We can show, and we will look at how disorder spreads. How, when one window is broken in, how that leads to other people breaking in windows, and how very quickly the whole situation can deteriorate. So it's sort of the flip side of the success breeds success dynamics, where something good gets even better. It's a scenario where something bad gets even worse, and where this can happen quite dramatically and quite quickly. We'll talk about norms, the enforcement of norms, norms that nobody wants, but they still emerge and they are there. We also talk about the sanctioning of norms. Then we talk about something that is called tipping behavior and thresholds. Tipping behavior is where a situation is like this and then suddenly it flips. And you might notice that from certain media trends that you have, or that you observe. Everybody does one thing and then bang, everybody does something else. And there's actually an incentive then to do something else because everybody else does it. Right? If all your friends are on Instagram, well, you're going on Instagram too. Bang. It's not that kind of it goes gradually. These things kind of tip. That means they kind of take off at some point. That's what we call a tipping point, how society changes very quickly. Then we have also threshold behaviors. It's sort of like how whatever you do depends on how many other people do it and so on. Talk about segregation dynamics. That is what I mentioned before. It comes originally from residential segregation in the United States, but you actually can look at it in other contexts. Actually, I just published a paper where we looked at segregation in Sweden, a country where you actually do observe segregation as well. You would not have thought about it, even though now after the elections, the world might know. So there is segregation as well, and how this comes about. What are the mechanisms that drive that? And it's fascinating because it shows you very vividly how something can come about at the collective level that nobody wants, even though everybody has a completely different interest. Okay, there's also going to be a component about networks in there. Well, obviously networks, that's sort of like my field of research. So the master students, you will also see me. In the next term, we will have a whole module on social network analysis, but we will cover a couple of topics here already in the context of this lecture. Okay, do we have any questions about this overview about what is going to come? No? Well, then I have the first reading for you guys. So it is on Blackboard. So you have until Thursday to do the first reading. It's an article by Alan Sokal. You find it on Blackboard under syllabus. Yeah? Okay, see you on Thursday.